friends, Bison, country folk. It's great to be with you here today to do the audio video book of Bison Medicine, the cure for a troubled nation. So I'm Brandon Peel, the author, and I'll be presenting. So this is going to be different than most audiobooks for a lot of reasons. One, we're also doing video, and it's one take. So you'll hear me stumble over words. I'll try to correct myself. I will also pause and expound on certain points. And the reason for that is I want this to be conversational and less kind of like academic and reading from a book, and more about the feel of us kind of sitting around a campfire and debating what it means to be a human being, what it means to live together, what we owe each other. Do we want to do a democracy or not? So like I said, I'll be stopping, expanding, and trying to define maybe some unfamiliar terms. The other thing I want to share is that this is a gift in the spirit of the Bison. This is free. It's a giveaway. And if you feel so called to pay it forward, please do in any way you would like. I suggest something related to supporting Native Americans, the Bison, but do whatever you want. All proceeds from the book sales all go to American Prairie, a great organization that acquires the habitat of the bison and protects it so that they can again be free and flourish. So today I'm going to move through just a few sections. So I'll look at what's on the back of the book. We'll do the acknowledgements, the invitation, the provocation, and the introduction. And then we'll be more videos that have the rest of it. So let's dive in. In our nation's perilous hour, we must remember that we are a nation that does big things. We are the nation of the Constitution, NASA, and the internet. We defeated the Confederacy and the Third Reich, and we will defeat hate again. But first, we have to scope the problem. The nature of our problems is not political, technological, or material. We already have every resource, every tool, every policy we need to be free and flourish. Rather, our problems are moral, psychological, spiritual, and cultural. And so we have to work the problem at these levels. Only then can we remake our society, our political economy, to actually be free, flourish, and give hate no quarter on this soil. Bison Medicine jumpstarts this moral, cultural, spiritual, psychological transformation. The book, the movement, the community activates three key ideas. So the first is that we actually have a national purpose. Most folks don't know this. God, I just sound like Trump there. Sorry. Some say we never did. That's terrible. But so we have a three-part national purpose to fulfill. And the first is our all created equal. And that's like the singular clarifying principle of the nation. The second is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the third is e pluribus unum, from many one. So the second point of the book is that in 2016, we summoned our national mammal, meaning there's a bipartisan bill called the National Bison Legacy Act that was passed into law. And we consecrated this animal as our national mammal. And so in this dark hour, it offers us guidance to fulfill our sacred purpose. The third point is that by activating your unique purpose, so your purpose in your organization or community, allows you to unleash your gifts, lead a team, and fulfill your purpose. But more importantly, you become America yourself. You start to fulfill the purpose of the nation as one individual. So that is the back of the book. Let us move on to our kind of inside cover title. So Bison Medicine, the cure for a troubled nation. So I open the book up with the seal of the bison national mammal, and then two quotes. One from Adrienne Rich. A patriot is one who wrestles for the soul of her country. Next quote is from Carl Jung. An archetype can break with shattering force into an individual life and into the life of a nation. Foreword by Reggie Mara. He's the author of Healing America's Narratives and Enough with the Talking Points. I leveraged his work substantially to write this book. Whether you've ever seen a solitary bald eagle in flight near that place where the clear lake meets the tree line, or a herd of bison roaming and grazing upon what seems like an endless prairie, now is the time to bring them both into your heart and mind. Brandon Peele loves the United States of America enough to publicly advocate replacing its national symbol, the majestic, in-flight, predatory, scavenging bald eagle, with the majestic, on-the-prairie, courageous, inclusive, generative, protective bison, named in 2016 as America's national mammal through bipartisan congressional support, the National Bison Legacy Act. As a manifestation of this love, Peele offers us both invitation and provocation in the pages of Bison Medicine, The Cure for a Troubled Nation. Beyond its sweeping contribution to contemporary American literature, this gift is, in the best meaning of an overused word, a manifesto and a call to action for the redemption and remembering of the American family on its circuitous road towards a more perfect union through true equality for all. He makes clear that our family is in trouble. We've been orphaned. We've lost individual and collective purpose. And we move from foster home to foster home, halfway house to halfway house, seeking to gain something real and permanent, seeking a lasting connection to the sacred, our land, our identity, our souls, our purpose, a sense of belonging to other people, our ancestors, and a shared future. In a detailed exposition of the corporate government collusion that both renders us orphans and benefits from that rendering, Peele reminds us that it is on each of us to embrace Bison Medicine for the good of all of us. Help isn't coming. We are the help. We have to be the adults. And if we are serious about the task we face, we must dive into the depths of the deceptively simple promises that we are all created equal, that we have rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that from the many we are, a true one may emerge. Bison Medicine offers us a multidisciplined excavation of the United States, its history, its growth, its current state, and the author implores us to look unflinchingly at our individual and collective development and shadow our physical, emotional, and spiritual health, and again, always our sense of purpose. He calls on the wisdom of the Haudenosaunee, Whitman, Melville, and contemporary writings that embrace and transcend conventional views of democracy, to include the nature of an authentic spiritual democracy and how it might manifest through a collective American vision and effort. Finally, in addition to this manifesto and call to action, Peele offers us a broad and detailed map of possible ways forward. From a people's constitutional convention to Bison medicine-based approaches to education, business, and community, every path on the map honors both individual and collective purpose. Brilliantly conceived, extensively researched, and passionately presented, Brandon Peele's Bison Medicine offers a rigorous and healing way forward for Americans who fully embody or want to the proposition that we are all created equal. Reggie Mara, author of America's Narratives and Enough with the Talking Points, December 24th, 2024, Northfield, Connecticut. Thank you, Reggie. Acknowledgements. You. First and foremost, I acknowledge and honor the part in you that aches for a country that works, that aches for a true story of us, one that coheres our good and evil, our shadows and doubts, our shadows and soul, rather, our past, present, future, one that roots us firmly in the truth, that composts what must be composted, that honors what is beautiful within us, and that gives us a wide and firm foundation to stretch towards the future. I honor your wisdom and resourcefulness. I write to the wise, resourceful adult inside of you, the one vested with intelligence, power, and agency. This honoring means that you'll have to work a bit harder than you might be used to working. You'll have to bend and stretch and question and fight. You'll have to check my sources, and you'll have to note your questions and disagreements in the margins or in your journal. And if you decide to take this journey with friends, as I recommend, reading it socially and debating its merits, you will be a changed person. And more of your potential and power will be realized. I acknowledge you for the intellectual, emotional, psychological, and spiritual work that Bison Medicine will demand of you. Since it can never be finished, I believe the best grade a work of nonfiction can get is a B+. And while I've made every effort to get this work there, calling on dozens of experts and dear friends to provide feedback, it will never be perfect. Like our nation's work towards a more perfect union, I ask your help to make the next edition more perfect. If you find any error or take issue with anything offered herein, please drop me a note at bisonmedicine.com. Thank you in advance. Here's to you. Thanks. Bison. Secondly, I acknowledge the medicine of the bison as a shattering force that calls us into greater courage, care, inclusion, play, independence, generativity, protection, and redemption. I first encountered it in a ceremony in February of 2016. So we'll pause here. So in Appendix E, I've fleshed out what occurred in that ceremony, but I'll give you just a brief glimpse. So this is part of a 8-month, 400-hour Purpose Guide certification program with the Purpose Guides Institute. And we were on I believe, 9-day intensive up in Sonoma or Mendocino County, somewhere up there. And the last day was this quest. So it's a day-long quest, and we've been preparing for it, created this problem statement for our souls. And for me, I was to step into compassionate leadership. That was like the problem statement, because I had a lot of righteous anger towards the world. And so during the ceremony, I received a name, and that is Buffalo Heart, who loves and holds the world to make whole the world. And like all things that come through on such a ceremony, you're supposed to hold it lightly, just kind of, treat it almost like a teacher. And so since early 2016, it's been teaching me. So that's how I personally came into contact with this, the shattering force of this bison archetype. And have been ongoingly healed and enlivened by it. In April of the same year, the bison was officially recognized as our national mammal in the National Bison Legacy Act. Our nation acknowledged that it too should be explicitly working with bison medicine. As a way to give thanks, pay our debt to the bison, and restore their right to flourish, the net proceeds of this book will benefit the American Prairie Foundation, an organization that partners with First Nations to acquire and protect the natural habitat of the bison and their entire ecology. If you are seeing this as a gift, as you are right now, please consider including the American Prairie Foundation in your annual giving. You can find them at americanprairie.org. Medicine. It is important to acknowledge that although I use the term medicine in the indigenous and shamanic sense of the word, conveying a spiritual and psychological power, I have no First Nations blood, nor have I been initiated or adopted by a First Nation. That said, like every one of us, my bones belong somewhere, to some soil. 23andMe says I'm indigenous to parts of Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. Yet these are not the lands that shape my soul. To that end, I think this land and the many caretakers of the land of my youth in Illinois and the land I now call home here in California. Additionally, although I'm not a medical doctor, I use the term medicine in the Western medical diagnostic sense, wherein I seek to understand the root causes of the malady, not only the symptoms of a singular organism or species, but really the whole physical, social, emotional, spiritual, economic, and political condition of our nation. I seek to diagnose the maladies that plague the entire nation. This book leverages both indigenous and Western medical frames to explore a path to cure ourselves and our nation. Nature. I think nature and its billions of winged, four-legged, furry, and scaled creatures, first cared for by First Nations people. Like our framers, I hold nature's gods sacred, above all other gods, for she carries many gifts, provides us many freedoms, and demands many responsibilities. In this sense, nature is our mother, teacher, in charge. If we prepare and humble ourselves, then we may receive her teachings, as the First Nations do and as our framers did. Nature is always asking something of us in return. It is my intention to honor this sacred relationship and offer this book as a devotion. Feminine. It's important to acknowledge that bison are central symbols of the divine feminine in numerous cultures throughout the Americas, Europe, Middle East, and Asia. To many cultures, bison represent fertility, providence, motherhood, gentility, sacrifice, protection, nourishment, safety, generosity, and many other life-giving, grounded in lunar qualities. It's important to acknowledge the feminine in all things, in all men, women, children, nature, and spirituality. However, our national historical record omits almost all of the feminine contribution and the journey, and our culture, and economy. Restate that. However, our national historical record omits almost all of the feminine contributions, and journey and culture and our economy persecutes the feminine at every turn. Until women like Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Sojourner Truth, and Emily Dickinson put pen to paper, became leaders, or mounted the stage, very little was recorded of the experience of our female country folk. We also had little sense of how men or society understood and honored and reconciled the feminine within themselves until the 1800s. That's when Herman Melville and Walt Whitman showed us the fullness and beauty available to men when we do so. So let us acknowledge and begin to honor the feminine in all of us, as well as the foundational influence of women upon our nation. Origins. I thank my parents, Nancy and Robert, and my stepdad, Dennis, for their love and care, for ensuring that my brother and I were fed, safe, loved, educated, challenged, and immersed in nature. We had the opportunity to be awed by her beauty. I give thanks to the rolling hills, forests, prairies, lakes, and rivers of Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, and Michigan. I give thanks to the national parks that have shaped my soul, and frankly, always demand my return. Yosemite, Grand Canyon, Zion, Yellowstone. I give thanks to the redwoods under whose shade and protection I write, and the deer, turkey, hawk, who continue to summon me. Teachers. I give thanks to my friends, teachers, and colleagues, alive and dead, who have guided me and helped me develop this project. I give special thanks to Lara Lee, B. Bocalandro, Robin Athey, Susan Lucci, Dina Wiggins, Stephen Herman, Rod Bacon, Robin Wall Kimmerer, Reggie Mara, Eric Liu, Kelly Doty, Herman Melville, Walt Whitman, Carl Jung, Emily Dickinson, Kanasa Tego, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Paine, Thomas Jefferson, Candy Arunk, Teganawida, Ayawinta, Black Elk, Crazy Horse, Sitting Bull, Vanessa Andriotti, Justin Skoda, Tyson Yakutaporta, Joshua Michael Schrey, David Graber, David Wangro, Stefan McKenzie, Wolfgang Arosa, Brian Edgar, Marianne Williamson, John Eden Kahn, Jonathan Ehrlich, Marcus Wu, Manly P. Hall, Ted Frelke, Dave Booth, Rashmir Balasubramaniam, Matt Stillman, Ezra Zohar, Rachel Zargo, Andy Swindler, Joel Domingo, Anne-Marie Klinick, Susan Mashkus, Craig Wheeler, Brian Hammond, John Robeson, Pedro Silva, and Sarah Jane Crespo. Hear this work. This is the invitation. Hear this work as an invitation from love, to love, in the spirit of love, as love itself, seeking to unfold in every imaginable way, in tender embrace, in the sweet sense that all is well safe and joyful, that 40 houses in every direction from you is the unfolding of love, a love enfleshed, a love in awe of nature's God, her wonders, her mysteries, her deep longing for you and all life to become and express love fully in every form. Hear this from the deepest place in your heart that yearns to be free, loved and supported, that yearns for all to be free, loved and supported. Hear this as a marriage proposal from this land and from the Bison, to love each other as much as we love ourselves, to stand in our dignity, agency, and nobility, as the Bison do, as a keystone species who make life flourish for all. Hear this as a completing love, one with wide eyes trained upon truth, and wild eyes seduced by our ideals and potential, upon all that is beautiful and broken, on all that can be known, on all that demands blessing, curiosity, and care. Hear the necessary hard truths herein as love, the type of truth spoken only by ones who love you enough to say what needs to be said, even though it will hurt at first. Hear this in the soothing voice of a mother, removing painful splinters so that her child may be healed and free to play. I'm going to pause here for a second. So the invitation is let's call it grandmother energy, in that it's full of love, but like it's going to be fierce and hard too. The next section, provocation, is more, let's call it sovereign warrior energy. It's like, listen up, pal. It's like grabbing you by the lapel saying, hey, it's time. Like, cut the shit. So we have energetic shift here. Provocation. As our democracy crumbles before our very eyes, as our most wounded rise to positions of unprecedented wealth and power, as the world descends into further chaos, as the United States' leadership role in addressing our numerous and existential threats diminishes, as our shadows are venerated as virtues, as extractionary capitalism, deglobalization, climate change accelerate famine, migration, war, genocide, and depopulation, we find that the old ways no longer work. Democracy no longer works. Capitalism no longer works. And some say they never did. The old institutions are crumbling under the weight of trauma, ignorance, and corruption, and are falling far faster than reforms allow. After decades of neglect, the very spine of our nation is beginning to show its age, and perhaps even fracture. So what if this polycrisis, let me pause here. Polycrisis is a word that terms like all of these crises all at once. So income inequality, climate change, AI, to name a few, nuked up autocrats. We know who those folks are. So we have this multiple crises all kind of at once. So a polycrisis, and potentially there is a solve for all of them. And that's part of what this provocation is. What if this polycrisis is a necessary catalyst for the United States and all of humanity to fully and finally know itself? What if this moment is ripe for a deep remembering of who we really are? Who we were before every moment of our days was gobbled up by the grind? What if this is the cry for a new national myth, or a third founding, following our first in 1776 and the second during the Civil War? What if, for it to work at all, democracy must work on all three levels: ideal, political economy, and spiritual practice? These are the questions we will be asking, debating, and attempting to answer. The United States is more than a country, more than a land, more than a people, more than its original sins of genocide and slavery, and more than an idea or merely an experiment. It is not just a democracy, but the idea of democracy enfleshed, ensouled, embodied in the practice of it, warts and all. And as we'll explore, unity is our destiny. And democracy is more than our form of government. It is our origin story in a deeply spiritual practice. If democracy is to survive at all, we cannot relate to it passively, nor merely tend to it with our votes, vocations, and taxes. We need to actively tend to it spiritually and breathe it into all we do moment by moment. However, very few of us actually know the purpose of our nation. Hell, most can't even name more than a handful of states. Few have been seduced by our shared purpose, and far fewer have taken their vows to fulfill it. As such, we must make ourselves familiar with the contours of our purpose, understanding our shadows that almost entirely obscure it, so that we may know what is required of us to call this place home. By embracing our traumas, our family history, we can soberly take our vows and fulfill our purpose, heal, transform, and integrate our shadows. So I hope you felt the grasp of my hands on your lapel, like, hey, it's with love, but it's also like, it's on. I'm not sure when you'll be watching this, but I'm recording it on the 6th of March, 2025. So I've had a month plus of knowing that it's on, if not longer. Okay, introduction. Outside the vows required of our nation's service members and naturalized citizens, U.S. citizens are not given the opportunity to truly know and take our vows to the purpose of our nation. We haven't been given the opportunity to know ourselves. We weren't given the opportunity to become initiated as adults or rooted in our personal purpose. And so we've never been given an opportunity to authentically choose and commit to the nation's purpose, all created equal, life living in the pursuit of happiness, e pluribus, from this position of knowing who we are, of being rooted in our unique life's purpose. Let me pause here for a second. So not only were we not given the opportunity, but even if we were, we wouldn't have been able to say yes to it. It's like, when you go to a wedding, you see like two children getting married, like, they're 19 or 29. You're like, what's actually saying yes here? Like, these two people don't know themselves. How the heck can they know what marriage is? How the heck can they know each other? What's actually happening here? Like, I have to swallow a lot of judgments and fears when I see somebody getting married. And so what I'm saying here is that we have to first know ourselves before we can choose another, much less choose to be a U.S. citizen. And so purpose is like a muscle memory. It's like we have to know it ourselves, who we are, what we're meant to do here, before we can then choose larger forms of meaning, like a nation or a company's mission or something like that. I will continue. Instead, we were born, raised, and came of age in a nation that gives us only patriotic pageantry, performative pledges, broken promises of politicians, and meaningless and often dangerous pseudo-initiations through sports, alcohol, drugs, decontextualized sex acts, heartbreak, stunts, poverty, illness, bankruptcy, and jail. I've experienced, I think, almost all those. Talked about that and Planet on Purpose a bit. We end up with identities born not of purpose and connection, but of generational trauma, economic hardship, physical impairments, societal exclusion, and psychological wounding. By default, we define ourselves by who we are not, instead of by who we are, or what we have in common in our shared destiny. We define ourselves by our respective caste. So I'm going to pause here for a second. So Isabel Wilkerson wrote a book called Caste, and it's basically, most folks think of caste as like Hindu, Indian, but we're essentially still living in this aristocratic caste hangover from Europe. And now that I say, you've probably like, oh yeah, in that neighborhood lives people who have a bachelor's degree, in that neighborhood lives people who have a high school degree, in that neighborhood lives people who have graduate degrees. yeah, the white folks are over there and the Hispanic folks are over there. So like we're in this highly segregated caste system. Granted, it's not as explicit as is named in other caste-based societies, but it's nonetheless there. So our caste, depending on our age, race, gender, income, religion, geography, education, and sexuality. The thing is, like, we didn't know any better. We were not given another choice. It wasn't like, say, hey, you want to live in this segregated hierarchical society or a free one? We were just raised in this society and that was it. And so it's not our fault. Yet, until recently, many of us assumed our flawed nation was the best of all possible worlds, say versus Soviet-style communism or European monarchy. So the election cycles of 2016, 2020, and 2024 have made it increasingly clear that we are not living in the best of all possible worlds. We need a new way forward, beyond just throwing more capitalism, technology, experts, policies, and votes at the social, economic, and environmental problems that capitalism, technology, experts, policies, and votes keep creating. We can't expect different results while doing the same thing. We need something beautiful and inspiring that calls us to work together and remake our nation. Enter the Bison. In 2016, as a result of bipartisan coalition in the House and Senate, along with the Intertribal Buffalo Council, Wildlife Conservation Society, and the National Bison Association, our nation chose the bison as our national mammal. The bison is a majestic and powerful herd species, a symbol, source of ethical guidance. So in Chapter 4, we'll explore the moral teachings of the bison, so bison medicine components. So courage, care, inclusion, play, independence, generativity, protection, and redemption. That can lead us back to ourselves, each other, and to our great national purpose, and help us create a flourishing future. In this sense, Bison Medicine invites you into a future worth fighting for, one that is worthy of our hearts, minds, and bodies, our brilliance, creativity, and leadership. In the coming pages, we'll root ourselves in our shared family history. So that's part 1. The impoverished way of life we experience because we're separated from our personal and collective purpose, parts 2 and 3. And the enlivening and healing medicine of the bison, part 4. Then we'll move to a high-definition view of our nation's purpose, parts 5 through 8, and a path forward to activate bison medicine in our lives and careers, part 9, and the conclusion. And we will be able to remake our nation from that point by following some of the prompts in the appendices. So at the end of each part is a 3-bullet summary of that part, as well as 3 discussion questions that give you a feel for the arc of the journey that you have just been on, but also to encourage you to read this socially. As we'll explore, much like the bison, we are a herd species. And we learn through conversations, stories, and relationships. Let me pause for a sec. So much of our culture is about, organized like Microsoft operating system. It's like folders, hierarchies, dependencies, all that kind of stuff. That's not how human beings are. We live, learn, and identify through relationship and conversation. So stories, how we communicate, how we feel about each other, that's as important to understanding something as the actual content being delivered. So this is all to say that if you simply read this alone or listen to this alone, you're not going to get it. You can try, but you're not. Like, you have to do it in community. And so that's why I'm about to say what I'm about to say. While we can be guided by a text, the real magic happens when we experience something powerful together, tell stories, discuss the meaning we are making. You're invited to share this book with your friends, family, work, alumni, professional, civic, and spiritual groups. You're encouraged to meet to discuss your experience. So see Appendix C for creating a book club. So I'm going to pause there for a second. Now, I've also put Appendix C on the bisonmedicine.com website. So, and obviously giving the book away for free via PDF and audio and video. So there shouldn't be anything getting in the way of reading this together, presuming you have folks within a particular group. So I would not just broadcast this on social. Think about a group that you're a part of, whether that's your church, whether that's your company, whether it's your neighborhood association, your civic organization. Say, hey, I want to read this book. It's got a lot of discussion questions. I think we can have a fun journey together. So that's what's on the website and in Appendix C. So that concludes video 1. Thank you for listening, watching. As mentioned, all proceeds go to the American Prairie. So if you're getting something from this and want to show your support the Bison, please do. And also check out all the other bonus content on bisonmedicine.com. So you'll find interviews with folks, so the Bison Medicine Talks that kind of inform the book. You'll find books, films, podcasts, music that inspired the book. And then we have, lots of other cool stuff like some swag and a course being offered, a community. So yeah, feel free to check out the rest of the package that surrounds the book. Hope you all are well, and I'll see you next time.